He's never fought us. Not us united.
I can so see that. That's it. Welcome to Comics League Indie Wednesday. I'm your host Jared. I'm here with Dolan, for the writer of Born of Blood. So, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. Glad to be here, man. Great to be here. Thank you.
Every time I have a new guest, I always ask the same question: what got you in the comics?
Well, I would say ever since I was in grade school, I have been into comics, but my uncle, he ran a magazine distribution plant in Indianapolis in the 1990s. And this is before Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
So he was responsible for distributing magazines and comic books all throughout the city. And when naturally with comic books, there'd be damages. So every week or so, he would come with a huge box to our house filled with damaged comic books for us to read. So this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. So I've got all the Image stuff, Zero Hour, Kingdom Come.
Some good stuff.
Great stuff. I'm reading all this as a kid. I'm eating it up. I'm loving it. And that began my addiction to comic books.
That's actually not a bad way to get into that. This thing is that you were so exposed to the medium at that time period. So to start off with Born of Blood, I gotta ask, I got major 300 vibes from this. Was that an influence?
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely was. And it's, granted with it, as much as 300 has been in pop culture now, not just with the comic book, with the film as well. I mean, it's hard to not get that when you're reading Born of Blood, because it's there. So it's like, all right, we might as well go a little crazy, as well with the story and the art and the action with this. So
particularly when you deal with like ancient Sparta, and I'm like, there's one other thing of pop culture that deals with ancient Sparta in this way. So I'm like, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going to emulate or just have it in that time frame as ancient Sparta, if it's going to be as spiritual as Gabe Hernandez called it, a spiritual successor to 300, you might as well do what you can to honor that book too, as well.
The other thing that I would call this is, and I was describing it to a friend of mine recently that I co-host a bunch of shows with. It's basically like if Wonder Woman was R-rated. So I'm like, because I definitely see a lot of influences of Wonder Woman too. That could be just me, but that's just what I detected from it.
No, and I have no problem with it either. That's a good way to see it too. Yeah, this is because Wonder Woman, she is a fierce, badass warrior, but this is just what if she was unrestrained, an unfiltered Wonder Woman.
Well, of course, it's also if Clunrad did actually cared about the book, so I had to put that in there. Or if Tom King could write a not depressing story. So there you go.
I tell you what, the best Wonder Woman story I've read in the last 2 years. It was a short story. It was when they did Wonder Woman Black, White, and Gold, and I think it was Peter Tomasi. He told a short story of Wonder Woman going through hell to rescue a friend, and it was by far the best Wonder Woman story we've had in years.
Sweet. So let me ask you this to start off. Where did the story and idea for like Born of Blood come from?
So this all started. The character itself, it takes place within the Merc universe, and the other two titles are Death Rage and Miss Meow.
Okay.
And at one point, I had told Sean that I had liked Death Rage #1 that just come out. I told him I liked the idea that this character is a descendant of the Spartans of ancient Sparta. And I told him that's a great idea. You've got centuries of stories you can tell right there with the lineage, different battles, different countries. That's a great idea. And I like the setup of this. And it's about a week or so later, I'm walking by his office. This is Sean Hudashko, who's the co-publisher of Merc Publishing, by the way. And he called me and he's like, "Hey, come on in." And he introduces me to Murphy, who is the editor-in-chief of Merc. And he says, "Hey, this is such and such." He liked Death Rage, but he also me. I also wrote comic books on the side in local competitions here in Indianapolis, and I've won a couple years in a row. And he had said to Murphy that, hey, he liked the idea of Death Rage. He liked the idea of Sparta. He liked this lineage, And then he said to me and Murphy that he was thinking about introducing a new female character for the Merc publishing line, but wanted it to be an ancient warrior female. And then he looked at me and said, would you be interested in writing this? Just out of nowhere. I'm like, sure, absolutely. So from that moment, 2 years ago, I started doing research into ancient Sparta and into telling a story I wanted to tell with a certain female that era. And I thought, who better than Leonidas's wife?
Yes, I love that. And as soon as you brought in Leonidas, and I think it was issue 3, I was like, immediately in my head, all of a sudden, I started hearing "This Is Sparta" on repeat. As soon as I was reading the book, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, and if you're gonna, that was the hardest part, honestly. As soon as I got to issue 3, I'm introducing Leonidas. This is a historical badass, and not just historically, but in films as well. And it's like I got to do this character justice. I got to portray him as the badass he was, but at the same time, I've got a female badass lead where it's like, okay, I've got these two who are type A personalities. They're going to conflict with one another, but they're going to fall in love eventually. Over time.
I will say my favorite part of Born of Blood is when you're describing how she earns her excuse me. Mm-hmm. She earns her place among the Spartans, how she goes into that camp at night and just slaughters everyone in their sleep. And I'm reading this and I'm like, yeah, this is badass.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's just I wanted to. It's one of those things where okay, she's not superhuman. Mm-hmm. She's a human, but she's a Spartan. But at the same time, she's constrained, but within human limits. So it's like, what can she do as a female at the same time? She's going to be stealthy. She's going to be quick. She's going to use quick methods, to take some sneaky methods to take people out. I'm thinking, okay, at camp at night. All right. She's got methods, that Moore probably taught her. And I thought that was a cool way to do that.
And I love how in the daytime, I'm looking at the page right now. As the next day, you see that one guy is shocked, and then all the heads on pikes. That is just wow.
Up that page. Yeah. That was the when we were figuring out when we were figuring out an artist. Actually, I'm sorry, it's the next page. The next page after that. We were figuring out who the artist was going to be. That was the test page.
Really?
Yes. And we got to our first artist, Carlos Beccaria, and I saw his test page and I said, that's the guy. He killed it. Don't need to see anyone else. First guy. And yeah, he nailed it.
What I love about it is that the action scene, you definitely, the book definitely has that kinetic feeling you'd want from a hand-to-hand combat or melee combat book, because it's entirely different than if you're doing a book about about modern warfare, because all you really have to do is communicate bullets and guns. With this one, you have to make sure that people are moving in a realistic way, because this isn't superheroes, and also in a way that's I guess also realistic and believable.
Yeah, and that's like I said, there's got to be a degree of verisimilitude. I like using that word, and believability. And I take pride in my action scenes, in my action sequences. So if you read the issues later on, like Born of Blood 3, Born of Blood 4, especially in the cave fighting Cialit, just the action sequences are intense. They flow, and I love that. I love focusing on that stuff. That's the fun stuff for me, and because I read a lot of current comic books, and a lot of them just don't have that focus on the fight scene. And that to me, that's a great disservice. And I like putting those kick-ass graphic, but flowing fight scenes. And I did that in Catfight versus Naughty and Nice as well. I worked my butt off choreographing that fight scene.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing: a lot of issues that going back to what the modern what a lot of modern comics do is that the art doesn't match the action scenes. What I mean by that is the art doesn't match the intensity of an action scene, because you could tell by how the writer meant this to look. When I read this, I was like, no, this is 100% the way it 100% matches, because it is brutal. She beheads a dude on this page.
Yeah, and that's just one thing with my artists. I told them, hey, this is going to be an unfiltered comic. This is going to be a graphic and brutal comic. If someone's punching someone, we as the reader, we're going to feel it. We're going to see it when someone gets punched. We're going to see it and feel it. We're going to know how that feels, and I want that to reflect. And my artists have done that repeatedly, and I couldn't be happier about that.
Speaking of punching, I also like the scene when she's like in the cell, and every night that dude comes in and trains her how to fight, but he trains her and like, no, I'm gonna fight you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just this issue 1 was like my response to more or less, like a lot of current day, superhero comics with females, where it's just like they're untouchable, they're invincible, they're infallible. I wanted to write a character who would fail, who would have to earn her right to be a Spartan, who would get her butt kicked, but would eventually, start kicking butt. And when she gets tossed into that cage, it's two punches right across the face, one after the other, more. And it's like, this is what it tells the reader, oh, this is what I'm in for. Okay.
Particularly when you deal with a culture such as Spartans, because while they did, because it was supremely, because I believe the way it worked in Spartan society was like women were not in the army. They were not fighting on the front lines. They were like in the background, like if the army failed, they could still fight, but they still significantly had to earn their route. And then 100% communicates it. And go back to what you're talking about. This is why I can't stand characters like Captain Marvel, because like they give her the answer to everything right out the gate, and you don't see people, you don't see her that right to be that capable. Wonder Woman earned that right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she did. Yeah, and Wonder Woman's origins changed in the last 30 years. Honestly, my favorite origin I like is the George Perez one. I like that where she's molded of clay, became the perfect female molded of clay. I like that. That's just me. But I forgot where we're going from there.
I was talking about capable female characters and how Wonder Woman earned that.
Yes, I love it. That's an aspect I love in characters where they have to earn something. They have to earn it. They're not just given it. They're not just saying, "I'm here. I deserve it." I'm like, no, that's not how the world works. That's not how earning a role or title works. Sorry, you got to earn it. Like case in point with Giaris, she has to survive and win to earn it.
It's like, speaking of that, we had an example of that. So Marvel is bringing back Ms. Marvel as a mutant, surprising no one. And they said the heart of the Marvel universe is coming back. And I'm like, even the Shields were like, she's not the heart of the Marvel universe.
What's funny is like I was telling my friend, I was telling Wes, I'm thinking critical. I'm like, I'm giving it like Labor Day, like October 1st, probably before she's back. No, it's like next month she's going to be back. It's like, oh, gee, I was wrong about that. Holy crap. That's clearly death does not matter. If you're bringing them back in a matter of a month, 2 months, who cares at this point?
Well, and that's the thing. And I talked to Wes about the exact same thing on this channel, because it's like the point, because I love the reaction of people when they announced that she was going to die. And there was a significant amount of people that were like, that thought this was going to be permanent. And I'm like, these are the people that don't actually read comics. Because if you read comics, you don't even have to read it for that long. Like, remember Death of the Justice League? Mm-hmm. That last,
yes, I do. Yeah,
in the same announcement, they told you they're coming back, and everyone's like, "Oh, gee."
I do remember. It's like, yeah, oh no, they're coming back. It's like, what? Why does that matter?
Why? Honestly, if they're coming back, there's no stakes.
Yeah, I mean, the last death that really mattered, I think, but it lasted over a year, was Superman. That's back in 93, 94. But granted, people may have thought he was coming back, but they didn't know when. And it's like, it's been over a year. Is he coming back? Eventually he did.
But also on that, the rebirth actually tanked his sales, because everyone's like, wait, you mean he's just going to come back because he was in a healing coma? That's the most that is up there with the Jason Todd being punched back to life by Superboy Prime as my favorite revivals of all time, because it's the most comic book thing in the world.
Yeah, because I remember, because they did retcon that, because it wasn't originally going to be Jason Todd straight up in Hush, but then the Superboy Prime turned out he punched the multiverse.
So technically he punched someone back to life. So I'm like, what the heck?
Is it like doing like the heart thing, where like in the movies where like
Literally that. Yeah, I know, right? Whenever I explain to someone that's not into comics, like, okay, he punched him back to life. They're like, wait, what?
It's like, hey, comics, right?
Well, yeah, because comics, literally, there are certain things that you have to like excuse because it's comic books. Like there was a scene of Superman pulling a solar system on a chain, so there was that. But speaking of this, by the way, I noticed there's no comic book BS in any of this. This is pretty much like realistic because you could have easily put in like, at least as far as I've read so far, magic or anything like really like crazy in here.
Well, here's the thing with that. I'm not sure if you've read the whole series or not. But
I've only read up to 3.
Okay, you get to the latter half. You will see the magic does come into play.
Okay.
Later on. Okay. But if you pick, some people are some of the criticisms I got later on were like, oh, there was no hints of this happening. It just came out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, no. If you look very closely in issues 2 and 3, there's a lady in there. She's doing
I know who you're. Okay, that's actually good. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so it's like I tell people, like, if you look very closely, there's someone behind the scenes who's kind of maybe manipulating things. Yeah, exactly. Who may be coming into play in the latter half of the book. So with some different means. So it doesn't necessarily come out of nowhere. Maybe I was too subtle with it, but
yeah.
If you see it, and there's a payoff for it later on.
Yeah. Now that you think about it, that did seem pretty like magical, if I can say that in issue 2.
Yeah.
But speaking of issue 2, the big thing that I noticed in issue 2 is that this is where it really communicates to me that this is a mature book, particularly when when the protagonist learns the other part of being a woman in this society. So I was like, okay, I see what you're doing there. It was cool, but I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, it comes out of left field, but it was very graphic, but we want him to be, honest to that culture, honest to that society, I mean,
that's what it is. It's ancient Greece. What do you expect?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not modern day New York. I'm sorry. It's just, but this is how things were. Women were strong, beautiful, capable, and they wanted strong, capable men to bear their children. And yeah, case in point, this is what you get in issue 2. And we learn that, if you're a woman in ancient Sparta, you're going to have ways to seduce men, and hopefully you're not a bad guy on the receiving end of that,
Yeah, we saw that, and that was awesome.
Yes.
But the other thing, what that shows is that, in particular with like what's her name, Giaris. She's a female warrior, so of course they're going to teach her how to use everything at her disposal in a war. It's the same thing with like on Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. They're going to teach you to use every single component that makes you unique, that gives you any possible advantage on the battlefield in order to be able to achieve that objective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Natasha Romanoff. You go back to her very first appearances in Tales of the Suspense. She pops up with seducing Tony Stark, working with against the Crimson Dynamo and all this stuff, playing both sides. It's like, yeah, that's a femme fatale. That's what they do. And as well as another Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises, Anne Hathaway. That the one scene I always go back to is I love it. It's when she's in the bar with the senator or whatever is at the bar, and the police are breaking in. She just starts, "Oh my God, help me!"
I love that.
And then turns it off. Just walks calm, cool, walks right out of the bar. Just turns it off.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing I think modern comics is missing, because with this stuff, it's likely to get the whole like objectifying women or misogynist label. But I'm like, all these scenes do, if done well, which this is, props to you, is that it's showing that, well, realistically, in this types of scenario where you're a female warrior, you are going to be trained to because I've heard, I've never served, but I've heard from my friends that have served, that you're taught to use every type of tactical advantage you can in order to defeat the enemy, and this is just an extension of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, she is a Spartan. She's going to do everything in her tool belt, at her disposal to win. Whether it's seduction, finding a rock, exposing a weakness that you have to take an advantage over you. She's going to do what she can. She is a female Frank Castle,
You know what? That's honestly the best analogy for this. It's if Frank Castle were a woman in an ancient Sparta. That's pretty much what it is there. Except not Frank Castle, written by Jason Aaron. I feel like I need to put that addendum on there.
This is a Garth Ennis Frank Castle.
Oh yes. Oh geez, this is like the boys. The way I would like to say this is that this is the boys combined with 300.
Yes. Oh, there we go. I like that. I like that comparison. Nice.
The boys, the comics, because somehow the show is not as intense as the comics.
It's not, and they changed things around. Like was it Mother's Milk's thing is now with Homelander and Black Noir. That twist is gone. It's just some guy. Because to the end of it, it's like, oh wait, I don't want to spoil it if anyone's seen it, but it's revealed who the Black Noir really is. It's like, what was the point of that? But okay, whatever.
The best example is when they were hyping up Herogasm leading up to that episode, and then it's like, I'm like, that's it? You tell me that this is gonna mentally scar me? What? This doesn't mentally scar me. But by the way, so going back to the book, my favorite part is when she gets revenge for the people that killed the king. The student has like a broken leg, and she goes, "Let me fix that for you." She tears the leg off.
Yeah, it's that's another thing. It's like I had a lot of fun reading it. She was just, there's another scene where she goes from sad and scared, talking to the guy, and like and more. That's the guy who trained her in issue 1. He's dead right there along the wall. The guy killed him, and she's like, so where is he? What did you do with him? Where did he go? And then he just smiles creepily and all that. That's when she turns it on. It's like, okay, oh, look at that, your leg. Let's fix that.
That reminds me a lot about, well, I didn't enjoy the sequel to 300 that much, but the part I did like is that how the queen goes from mourning to at the end of the movie where she's there with the Spartan army just hacking people's arms off. And I'm like, yes, that is it.
Yeah, she's going to have her moments, her moments of humanity, her moment of sadness and fear. And it's like, then that adrenaline kicks in. It just strength, resolve, and badassery.
And then I love how, like, Giaris, like we said, all the other Spartan women, they go to the camp and then proceed to completely murder people.
Yeah, seduce the men, say, hey, we need help. We're refugees. We need a place to stay. And yeah, they take advantage of it.
Speaking of Black Widow / Catwoman, in fact, here's the thing. This seems like in tactics, it's like Catwoman meets Wonder Woman meets Black Widow, but except written by Garth Ennis.
Yeah,
it's good.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so anytime I can be connected to like a Garth Ennis or a Frank Miller, I'll gladly take it. I don't care what people say about Frank Miller. I'll gladly take it.
By the way, the covers are like, wow, I love these covers so much.
That's all Sean. Sean and Jamie Tyndall. Sean, they're best friends. They're co-publishers at Merck Publishing, and Jamie is one of the best designers, cover artists in the business. And Sean's been doing this for a long time now. He's got a stable full of artists that he works with, and he has some of the best cover artists in the business. There's no qualms about it.
Yeah. It's like, compare this to a lot of what I see, because I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'm like, I miss when Wonder Woman was drawn sexy. I have to say, because right now, a lot of female characters are not, including, for some reason, Catwoman.
Yeah. Bare basic. She's drawn very basic. But it was so funny. Like at C2E2, I think it was like last year, Chris Claremont came up to Jamie Tyndall, and told him he loves how he draws women and he loves his design work that he does. And Chris asked him, like, why isn't Marvel working with you right now? And because Jamie gets it, Jamie understands sex appeal and the appeal of a cover, how it can sell, And then at that point, granted, I can sell someone on a great cover, great, but it's taking the thumb and the index finger, turning that cover and actually reading the story. That's my part. That's where I come in.
The story has to be good, because otherwise, because we've had plenty of awesome, of crappy stories that had great covers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain publisher, a certain explosive publisher, if you will. They've got great covers. Lucio Perillo, Peach Momoko, Lyrics, Raja Lynn, just beautiful covers. But a lot of times the stories on the inside, they're okay, I guess.
So going back, so now advancing on to issue 3, This now that you mention it, I do notice that one character seems to be like manipulating things behind the scenes, pitting two characters against each other. I was like, oh, okay, and now it makes more sense because I was like, okay, so wait, and now I see like the magic behind it, like the hint of magic behind it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like those little subtle hints of magic. But yeah, then there's a big payoff at the very end. At the end of the story, yeah, when you get to bed by the through issue 6.
It's very like Jonathan Hickman-ish because what I love about Hickman is that when he writes a really good story, like take Avengers and New Avengers, he puts all these tiny little sprinkles in along the story that may seem like, okay, what is this like?
Why is this there?
Yeah. And then when you get to like the end of the story, you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. And that's one thing, like, as I've grown as a writer, I've learned things I can do to, to tease things to come, in just small scenes, and I'm working on a project right now that I'm going to be doing that in as well. So I'm hoping people pick that up as we get further along in those issues.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I also dig because you definitely hint, like particularly here with the whole romance between Leonardo and Giaris. I got that because I was like, because just the way that like he's like, let me take a look at that wound on your shoulder thing, and he leans in, and I was like, oh, immediately at that scene, I was like, I see what you're hinting here, and I dig it. And again, it gets into like, so that they're captured in the cave and everything. And honestly, this is where you start to see a little more magic, as a matter of fact, because I see the green fire and all that, and I'm like, okay, so now I see like everything's starting to come together. But by the way, was this over here like an homage to the actual death of the Spartan army in like 300?
Yeah, like a slight homage to it. Yeah,
because when I was reading that, I was like, is he going to do that? And I'm like, great, I love it.
If we had more, and the thing is, we're limited by the number of pages we've got, and it's if we had more real estate, I would have been able to show the actual deaths, how graphic and brutal it was in that cavern. But yeah, it worked. You get the point across.
It communicates. I get what you're actually trying to show. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, and the Spartan army is wiped off panel. That's fine. Plus, we've seen that so many times in other media that I don't think everyone knows what that is.
Yeah, exactly. And just that case of subtlety, you're hoping the subtlety is just enough.
Yeah, and that's really the balancing act as a writer, because I'm working on a project myself, and it's always a balance. Like, is this one thing that I should make pretty obvious, or is it another thing because of page real estate that I should just hint at and hint it in a way that they'll understand it?
Yeah, and this is where a great editor comes in hand. And I've got a great one in Joe Corallo. Joe Corallo is fantastic and great guy. I love just hanging with the guy. I love just cracking with the guy. But I rely upon him and Aaron Sparrow, the creative director. Aaron Sparrow is another great friend of mine. We just talk about things all the time, and I rely upon their experience because it's significantly more than mine. So I trust them in their judgment. How they think it should work.
So another thing I wanted to ask you. So what would you say is like a piece of advice that you would give a starting up comic writer?
Oh, I got several pieces of advice.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Oh, man. It's figuring out exactly the story you want to tell. Because the story itself it will evolve over time. You'll get to where you want to go to eventually. You don't need to know the whole thing right away.
Okay.
You don't need to. I would say figuring out the type of story you want to tell, knowing who your characters are. Don't have yes people in your background. Like if you give someone to read, don't give it to someone who's just going to be like, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's like my brother, for example. I would originally give him my stuff to read. He'd be like, yeah, it's okay. I'm like, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah.
But I would give it to others, to proofread. Like some of my old editors in high school and college, I give them stuff like ask them what they thought, and as well as Joe and Aaron. So, which is great to have. And those are some, just give your stuff to people to read, that you can trust, who will give you strong criticism, and be able to take and accept criticism. You've got to take it. You have to take it. If you're going to put yourself out there, you have to take it.
That piece of advice really ought to also go to a lot of Marvel and DC writers, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I used to work for Neil Adams, and I would see and overhear those portfolio reviews he would give to people, and it's like, oh man, if you're an artist, you better be able to take the heat, or just get out of here. But so it's like, if I'm stepping into the ring, I need to be able to take the criticism, and grow from there.
Yeah, because you're in a public medium. And also, if you're going to comics, particularly if you're going to the big two, you're dealing with other people's toys. So you have to expect that they're going to be protective over those toys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you said you're playing in someone else's toy box. They're going to expect you to treat those toys with some respect. Well, I don't know about so much anymore.
Yeah, I know, right?
It used to be you treat them with respect. Now you can just break them and put them back and be like, what?
Or
that wasn't broken.
Break them and not put them back because Tom King.
So Tom King. But show respect to the characters that you're working with.
What was your favorite part to write in issues 1, 2, and 3?
I would say in issue 1, it was showing her grow. It was showing her. That's the sequence from going into the prison cell to leaving.
Yeah.
That was, I loved writing that, showing her growth.
Because she is a wholly different character by the time she leaves that cell. Like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to show that. I wanted to get that across. And I think it worked.
It worked. It worked. Trust me, it worked.
And issue 2, I would say probably at the end when she discovers, well, 2 parts in issue 2 I liked. One was that she discovers her father has been killed. And at the very last page at the funeral, those were probably my 2 favorite parts to write in issue 2.
I dug those. You definitely got the whole warrior's funeral part right, I think.
Yeah, I had to go into some research and discover, like, what did Spartans actually do for burials and everything. So that was along the lines of what they would actually do. And issue 3, I would say it was probably the sequence. The most difficult part and fun part was the sequence between her and Leonidas in that tent. Just the tease romance, but showing the tension, showing just that they have a spark with one another. It's, at first, they're butting heads, but they have a mutual. There's a connection between them.
If this were turned into a movie, who would you want to play Giaris?
Oh man, people were based on one of the covers, people were thinking Mila Kunis, and
I can see that.
Yeah, but at this point, she's too old now. At this point, I mean, don't look. That's not a knock on her age or anything. She's a beautiful woman, but she's in her 40s, and that's just she can't. I don't see her playing a 20-year-old woman, 21-year-old woman.
I was about to say, if you want 20, if you were beyond the 20-year-old, you could just you could just make it obvious and just cast Gal Gadot.
Yeah, good. That'd be one heck of a twist in her career. Go from
I know
Wonder Woman to another.
She has a type.
Yeah, it's like, seems very familiar here. But yeah, for Giaris, what's funny is that I've seen so many actresses that I haven't really seen one outside of Mila Kunis whom I could see playing her. Maybe Gal Gadot, maybe, but it's one of those things where I haven't really seen that one actress yet.
Maybe a younger Mia Jovovich. Like, obviously younger, but still, I'm like,
yeah, maybe. I know I'm thinking like Cuffs era, like 1991 era, but yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe.
I could see that, yeah. But yeah, I could definitely see this at least it being turned into a movie or like because this reads like Game of Thrones.
And now here's the thing: if anyone were to ever suggest that, oh, this was made for a movie, that is complete crap. This was
yeah.
never, ever, ever, ever intended to be a movie. I wrote this to be a fun, solid, kick-ass comic book story from 1 to 6. And anyone saying or suggesting, if anyone says to you, like, oh, this is clearly supposed to be a movie, no, that is not true. It was never, ever, ever intended to be a movie.
Yeah, I was just saying I could see it becoming a movie because first off, I would want to see a lot of these cool scenes in action, because I would love to see she's having sex with a dude and then she just murders him.
Yeah, you know, you just hit the nail on the head. It's like I would love to see after reading this a lot, I would love to see a lot of these scenes, especially when you get to issue 6. There's a lot of big scenes where it's like, you know, this would be pretty cool on the big screen to see.
Yeah, and but the thing is, you know that as soon as you do the prison cell scene, it's going to cause an internet uproar because of the way people are nowadays.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But you know what? I would like to think anyone, if any studio were to pick up this comic and read issue 1, they'd be like, okay, this is what we're in for. This is what we would have to do.
Yeah, all you got to do is
do it. Could we do this?
Send them the comics, and then you're just like, are you sure you want to adapt this?
Yeah, but it's at the same time, it's a high risk, high reward. You know, on one hand, you know, you're going to piss off a significant number of people, but on the other hand, there's going to be a significant number of people who are going to like it too.
But here's the thing, though. People like Game of Thrones, and a lot of the stuff that happens in that book has happened in Game of Thrones, and people were like fine with it. So it could be like it wouldn't necessarily have as much of a negative effect. I mean, I would think.
Yeah, maybe that's just it. We don't know, because Game of Thrones really changed things, and maybe there'd be an audience who would really accept it. I would I would like to think so. I'd like to hope so.
Plus, once again,
because Tristan, who Nerdez Newsstand, she loves the character Giaris. She's the voice of Giaris.
Oh yeah,
but, she loves the adventure she went on, you know, and she loves the first issue. So I would like to think that if females, you know, like this character and like the adventure, then it should work.
Plus, here's the thing: we're starved for female badass content where the character earns the right to be a badass.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just it. You hit the nail on the head. It earns the right to be a badass.
It's like with the reason why the first Wonder Woman movie did so well and why it's like one of my favorite DC movies, because you see her, she earns that right to be Wonder Woman throughout the entire movie. She fails, she learns from that failure, she goes through loss, and then she's like, no, I have to be a hero at this point.
Yeah, and not just that, but we see so many different emotional spectrum, different reactions of Giaris's Wonder Woman character on the film. She, like you said, she has her badass moments, but she also has her moments of being a woman, where she actually is with Steve Trevor one night, or when she sees the baby, she's like, oh, a baby, like she's never seen a baby before. Yeah, it's great stuff. The ice cream, it's like, there's great human moments.
And that's what people don't, and here's why Wonder Woman 2 failed, because Wonder Woman 1 was still respectful to the male characters too, because I know there's like a temptation when you're making movies about female superheroes or like female badasses, you make the male characters useless, which it was cool to see Leonidas also be like the badass also, because you could have just had it be like he's just this background character because you're trying to highlight Giaris, but you're like, no, this character deserves respect at this point.
Yeah, absolutely correct. You know, I'm not going to be one of those guys who's just going to push him in the background. You know, this is the alpha male of alpha males. This is King Leonidas.
Yeah.
So we've got to show him respect. You know, he's not just going to be a background player. He's going to be an active participant in this. But it's a difficult balancing act. You know, with Giaris, the lead character, and Leonidas. So it's like, I like to think I did a relatively good job with that. Especially when you get later on, like the issue 5 and so, you'll see that Leonidas has his moment to shine.
Now, my last question before we wrap up is: so do you see this more as like an ongoing series, or is it like a mini series with a definitive ending?
So issues 1 through 6 you can read by themselves, and but however, when these were released, you'll find out in another series that Giaris is still around in more ways than one.
Oh, okay. I'm interested in that.
But there's a payoff to that at the end of the series of Born of Blood. You pick it up. But there are going to be one-shots and miniseries coming out. And I'm working on another one right now.
Sweet.
Yep. It's I was able to talk about it the other night. It's called Born of Blood, but it's Giaris versus Jack the Ripper.
Oh, yes.
It's a one-shot and it's 28-pager. Waiting to get the notes back from Joe and Aaron for the second draft, but it's going to be a fun story. It'll be a fun, kick-ass, bloody story.
So you're telling me it's Born of Blood by Gaslight?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that actually is really cool. I like that. So on that note, we're gonna wrap it up. So Drew, are all these issues available to pick up, or is issue 6 coming out? Where we stand on that?
Oh, they're all out right now. Issues 1 through 6 are available right now at mercpublishing.com.
I have to pick those up.
Comicsleaguecomics.com. Hopefully, if you don't want to go to either of those places, hopefully your local retailer will have them. You can tell them to order it from Lunar. Lunar Distribution should be able to order them as well. But all are out, and on Kickstarter right now, we're releasing special editions of those issues.
Okay.
So we're including like the original scripts, some sketch images in the back, just behind the scenes stuff.
Cool. But, and when I read 4 through 6, maybe you can come back on and talk about those ones too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah.
So on that note, everyone, I'll have all of Drew's links in the description below, and we will see you later. Stay here, work, everyone. Bye-bye.